Good morning, Jack.
Good morning.
How are you?
Alhamdulillah. Those are the few words I know. Kwais, Zain, Tamam, Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
So we would like you to tell us a little bit about growing up in Arab American home. Where did you grow up? What kind of family you have? Just a little bit background about growing up in this country.
I was born in Pittsburgh, and I grew up in a small town south of Pittsburgh, steel town, called Clairton. We had the largest coke works in the world. In other words, not the coke that you drink, but the coke that gave us plenty of pollution and a lot of jobs. And my parents, my grandparents had immigrated from Lebanon. We were a working class family. My grandfather worked in the mills, and then he, during the day, and peddled at night. My mother, God rest her soul, scrubbed floors in a school. So I could go to college. She wanted to be a school teacher, but she had to stay home and take care of the family. And my grandparents raised us, as well as my mother. My father left, and so we had this wonderful sort of love. And throughout the entire home, our home was the center for ethnic sharing. Everyone came in to our home, the insurance salesman, the bread man, the milkman, the neighbors, coffee pot, Syrian bread, khubz. I want to be politically correct, you know. Khubz, yeah. Anyway, and so we were exposed, my brother and sister, to all of this. I worked in the summers in the steel mills. I had many African American friends, and I didn't know until I took my grandfather to the black part of town that we were segregated, that in school we were integrated, but the city was segregated. There was the black part and the white part, you see? And so I had this wonderful sort of with my uncles and my aunts, but my mother was the one that really had it difficult.
Why?
But yet, because she had to get up, 5:30 in the morning, wait for a bus, take her to the school. She only went to school 8th grade, and then she had to come home and help her mother raise the children. But she was so bright, I think it's true with a lot of immigrant families that, large families, that women had to help. They had to stay home and help. And so she was denied the education that she should have had. But the beauty, you ask, I'm giving you a lot of information. The beauty of growing up is that no word was ever said against anyone because of their religion or the color of their skin. Never.
You mean in your house?
In the house. And so I think that foundation, I don't know, none of us really, we never really know, really led me to the path that I took later in life. The fact that there was this openness and about people, not to condemn people because of where they were from.
So how many brothers and sisters were
One
you?
brother, one sister.
One brother and one sister.
Yeah. I'm the oldest.
You are the oldest.
Which means I was the one that was spoiled the most.
You were the spoiled. You took a path that not many other Arab American took. You went to universities and got education, and we know that many Arab Americans did the same, kids of immigrants. But you took a path in you were on a mission. And that mission is that there's stereotyping about Arab American, and I really have to address it, and I want to tackle this. What do you think was the motive? How did you end up where you are, or you end up doing what you were doing?
Anan, I think primarily it came from my home, and it gravitated in the sense that the real turning point was Lebanon. I had a Fulbright teaching grant to go to the American University in 1974. And I was there for 1 year teaching at the AUB. And we traveled extensively, I took the family. And I met my first Muslim, if you can believe that, at age 40.
40?
At age 40 in Lebanon.
First Arab Muslim you met?
First Arab Muslim.
Wow.
So in spite of the fact, which is interesting, that I had a PhD, that I was well educated, that I was considered to be somewhat of a scholar, I knew nothing about the Middle East. I knew very, very little. So, I went to several mosques. I, befriended many Muslims and some Druze, and it was just an awakening for me. And also when I was there, I was thinking about all of these horrific images of Arabs on television before we went to Lebanon, particularly in children's cartoons. My children told me, Daddy, Daddy, bad Arabs are on, bad Arabs are on. This is before we went to Lebanon. So anyway, so at AUB, in April of 1975, at the Alumni House, I gave my first speech on this subject, first time. And I came back to the States. I was excited, going to write an article on this, because no one had addressed this.
Right.
No one. And so I thought, it's wonderful to make this breakthrough. And no one would publish it.
Nobody will publish it.
3 years. So I think this was also another turning point. I had a choice, and I thank God for Bernice, my wife, because she stood by my side. I could have dropped the subject, no problem, because I was publishing in other areas, children's television, public broadcasting, images of nuclear war on film. I had a nice record of publishing, on different topics. I didn't need this for any promotion, for anything. But because I kept getting these rejection letters over and over and over and over, I think it just made me more persistent. It just made me more determined to pursue this because of the prejudice. I mean, I can't tell you, words cannot express to anyone the prejudices at that time in the late 70s and early 80s. I used to almost beg people to let me speak on the subject. And when I spoke on this topic, the animosity and I was attacked, monitored. And I'm just exposing the vilification of a people and a religion. And then, I'd get criticized too. They'd say, what are you, a Christian Arab? Why are you defending the Muslims? Shoo, defending the what's a Christian supposed to do? What's a religious person supposed to do when they see someone being vilified? Remain silent? But all of this, and it never stopped. And I didn't have graduate assistants. I was alone, which made it that much more difficult. Right. I had Bernice, the two of us, but it's not enough. I didn't teach on this topic. The courses that I taught were mainstream communication courses on film, radio, television, history, criticism, theory. And so I would come home and do all of the research at home.
Okay. So when was the breaking point? Now you're a celebrity. Everybody wants to hear you. Everybody wants to invite you to speak. When was the turning point in your, from being rejected all the time to a time where people really want to hear what you have to say? What triggered that, you think?
I think, the TV Arab, the book came out in 1984.
Okay.
And maybe 10 years after the book came out,
okay.
Finally, people began to pick up on the subject. And then I began, writing op-eds in the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, and then getting chapters in books on multiculturalism. Excuse me. It's all the coffee. That's let me have some water. If this were arak, it would be easier. I think, so the early 90s probably, I would say, all of these publications. See, before you'd pick up a book on multiculturalism, and they'd have every group except Arabs. Every group.
Yeah.
And so one of my goals was to get articles in these books. So I think it was in late 80s that I had an article published in Newsweek magazine.
Okay.
My turn. Okay. And that began the evolution. And then, of course, the Real Bad Arabs book, which came out just before the tragedy of 9/11, and then the revised edition of Real Bad Arabs and Guilty. So probably the last 10, 12 years, yes.
So looking back at all what you have done, where you feel the most proud? What do you feel your most accomplishment is? And you say, I feel really happy I was able to accomplish this.
I think exposing this injustice to making it what gives me really which warms my heart, and I'm very grateful, you know, is that I was able to, I think, three things: to expose this injustice through my writings, my lectures, my consulting, my media appearances over all these years, so people could finally, I could document it. I provided the mukh, the proof. What's mukh? Mukh is the mind. Brain. Well, the proof. What's Arabic for the evidence for all of this? And second, to have an impact, like the films, Syriana and Three Kings, where I consulted on the films. The consultation made a big difference in how those movies and others that I've worked on came out. And the third, which gives me a lot of hope, my scholarships. You know, we've awarded to young Arab American media scholars almost 40 scholarships. It's been in existence for 13 years.
Right.
2 of my scholarship winners have made feature films. And At the Salt of This Sea, Anne-Marie Jasser, Iyad Zahra, the Tariq scores. And young people all over the world write to me now and tell me that they want to make a difference, or they refer to my materials in their theses, in their dissertations, in their lectures, and to have it gives me hope for the future, because when I was doing this, there were no young Arab American image makers or scholars looking at this topic. You know, now we have people like Evelyn El-Sultani, who's teaching it, who's very good. We have, they're picking up on it. They're taking my work and they're moving forward and enhancing it, and they're going to make a difference. So I think that the young people moving forward with this and the knowledge that they have, and they're determined. Jackie Saloom, the young filmmaker, Planet of the Arabs and Slingshot Hip Hop. I mean, the work has had an impact on these young men and women. And that, I think, probably makes me,
very, very happy.
Yes.
So, non-Arab, Arabs respond. Is there a difference between the way Arab respond to your work and the way non-Arab respond to your work, or you don't see a difference in that?
I don't, much of my support has come from individuals who do not have Arab roots. I wish there had been more. Oh, I don't like this. Well, the honesty, let's be honest. Very little support from the community, but not the community, from Arab Americans. I mean, now, yes. But still, I think, in all the years that I've been doing this, maybe 1 or 2 people of our community have ever said, what can I do to help? And my publisher, Michel Mouchabek, and there's a wonderful man here in Dearborn who made sure every member of Congress had a copy of Real Bad Arabs. But by and large, no. So I would say the response has been the same. Many, not many, but several of our cousins, Jewish Americans, have been as outspoken as anyone on this issue, and have helped me and supported my work and published my articles, which is great. It's just wonderful. And individuals with our community have helped as well. I would have liked, and I'm not complaining, I'm trying to be honest, I would have liked some more support in turn, but it's a problem within our community, and I think it's a problem because I was addressing Arab images. It's a problem, we have an Arab American museum. It's not Lebanese, it's not Palestinian. It's not. We have to break out of this mold. And I think had I written a book on the Lebanese image, would have been different, or the Palestinian image, it would have been, or the Egyptian, or the Saudi image, you know, who knows? I mean, how much money I could have gotten. No, yeah, I'm joking, but I'm being serious. But because it was Arab, I think, you know, it may, and you may run into this with the museum too. There's still these old-fashioned ideas that it's not the same. They don't. Some members of our community don't realize that for most Americans, for most people in the world, a Lebanese, a Palestinian, an Egyptian, a Moroccan is an Arab. You know, they want to. And today, the word Arab, unfortunately, has a very negative. There's a negative association. Arab equal Muslim equal terrorist, and you don't see. I still have yet to find a restaurant called Arab restaurant. And why, honey? See, Jerusalem, Haji Baba, Ali Baba, Mafi, Arab restaurant.
Yeah,
know?
because they're afraid that people don't come and eat at the restaurant.
Yes. See? So I always say I'm an Arab American. I never say Lebanese. I mean, if someone really pushes, you know.
If you push.
If I push.
Yeah.
And I, you know, yesterday was St. Patrick's Day. I could say Shaheen, I'm Irish, you know, because it's like Shaheen. But I think in terms of support, there's no difference. No difference at all. No.
You got, okay. Now, you as a person of Arab descent or Arab background, did you or any members of your family close experience that prejudice that made you really want to write in this, or did you experience as a person, or your mother, or you look like non-Arab because the image of Arabs also is that we're all dark-skinned, and you.
Well, I used to have a beard and a mustache, you know, and a nice tan, but not anymore. I mean, I looked more Arab in my youth. I mean, in my 40s, in my 30s. The first time it happened once with my children, our children. They, you know, the weekly reader used to go to all the kids in high school. It's like a information sheet, and they did something on Palestinians, on their being terrorists. And they came home and they said to Bernice and myself, "Are we Lebanese or are we Palestinian?" Because Bernice has Palestinian roots, I have Lebanese roots. And so my daughter said, "I'm Palanese."
Palanese.
And my son said, "I'm Lebastinian."
Palestinians.
Yes. So, but they encountered some problems at school, but it didn't last. For me, it was different. No problem ever. And then I started doing research on this topic, and it was like someone took a sledgehammer and hit me in the stomach. Two things. All of a sudden, I became the Arab professor. Can you imagine? My research, I would ask for, you know, a few dollars to do some research on this topic. They called it propaganda, they rejected it. Now, prior to that, all of my research projects were funded. I was considered to be not a rising star, but at the very top with my research, at the very, very top. And then, you know, whenever I would travel, like I came to Flint, Michigan. Good story about Flint. Front page of the everyday sort of local news, Arab professor talks about stereotypes. I wasn't even talking about Arab stereotypes. Arab professor. Not in a positive way, you see. And then they invited me to their TV station. They wanted me to talk. They said, half an hour on stereotypes. I get to the television station, there's an Israeli general talking about the situation on the West Bank and Gaza and how horrible the Palestinians are. And they put me up against this man. Well, you know, Anan, politically, I'm not the most, that's not my area.
Right.
But had I backed out, but they would never do this with another professor.
Right.
Why? So there was this kind of prejudice directed. And again, whenever I spoke, I mean, even some religious people back then, you know, of different faiths, people would come up to me. I remember once I gave a speech in Philadelphia, and a woman came up to me afterwards. She was married to an Arab American, and she took me by the hand and she said, "I don't understand you. You know, those people, they're just like that. They're all like that over there. Why are you defending them? So it was the prejudice that was directed at me at the university. It was ugly. It was ugly because I was alone. There was no one came and said, come on, Jack, well, let's do something about this, you see. We'll try and do something about this together. We won't tolerate this. I couldn't go to anyone. I think that was the sad part. You know, with the TV Arab, with the article that I wrote, not getting a publisher. I mean, all people have difficulty publishing their works. It's never easy to get something published, but there was blatant prejudice. And then I think this is important. When I went to do research on the TV Arab, I went directly. I was, I think, the first one ever to confront directly producers, writers, directors. And 1/3 of them were not ashamed to say they hated Arabs or disliked Arabs or Islam. I mean, I'm sitting there talking like I'm talking to you, and they're telling me what lousy people they are in the Middle East. You know, 1/3.
Wow.
And it's, you know, they didn't care. They just came right out.
Now, when you grew up, you know, your family, your parents were immigrants or your grandparents were
Both.
immigrants? Both.
Actually, my grandparents first immigrated to Brazil,
Okay.
but my grandmother had a couple of miscarriages. They
Okay.
went back to Lebanon,
Okay.
and after World War I, they came to the United States, along with my parents.
Okay. So did they experience any prejudice? Do you remember your parents or grandparents talk about
No.
experiencing prejudice? No.
No.
So
It was, this is a small steel town. You know, you worked in the mills. Everybody initially, I think, they picked on, but not because of where they were from.
Okay.
So you had the Polish people, you had, you know, from Hungary, from Greek. We had a mixture of people. Never as a child, no.
Okay. So if you want to, there's a couple of questions actually. One of them is that if I recall correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, you were active with the Arab American University graduates. That's where I remember I met you. And you were active in ADC. And what role did you play with this organization? That's question number one. And number two, did the emergence of this Arab American organization, did it make it easier for your work?
Well, let's back. No.
No.
No. I was active briefly with AAUG,
Okay.
Arab American University. That's when I came back from Beirut.
Okay.
And my first speech in the United States on this subject was at the AAUG convention in New York, and I think that's where we met.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where we met. That was in 1975.
Right.
September, October, I don't remember. ADC, you know, I'm a charter member. I'm very active. I award my scholarships via the ADC, and I'm a strong supporter, as you know, of the ADC since 1980 for 30 years. But I don't think so. I think what the ADC did is it exposed the work to more people, more members of our community. So in that respect, yes, because whenever my books came out, they would be on display there. I screened my documentary there. I've spoken on the issue there. And everyone who goes to the ADC is familiar, almost everyone, with the work on the stereotype. Yes. So from that perspective, yes. The creation of the ADC, thanks to James Averis, was a very good move.
So what would you tell young people if young people came to you and say, how can I make a difference? You know, how can I make a difference? You made a difference for the Arab American. I think you made big difference. So if young people come to you and say, I really want to leave a difference, what would you tell them?
Well, first of all, I'd say I try to check their sincerity. You know, are they really sincere? If they are sincere, I would always say, do something. Whatever you do, don't just talk. You know, do something. And then I will elaborate. become active with an organization, National Association of Arab American Professionals in New York, a young people's organization, several chapters all over the country. Did not exist when I was younger.
Right.
You have the ADC, you have the museum, you have Arab American Institute. You have these organizations that welcome young people. Become involved with them, be an intern, major in media, become a part of the process. Presence propagates power. If you're a journalist, someone's not going to discriminate against you if they're working alongside, if you're working alongside them. So become part of the process. You see, Anan, what's happened today is very sad. Because of 9/11 and because of some right-wing fanatics, you know, I shouldn't say that, because of some, excuse me,
That's
because of some people like Glenn Beck and Michelle Malkin and others who have an agenda to vilify all things Arab and all things Islam. They've neutralized many people of our community. There's fear in our community. I was with someone recently telling me, a professional, he's been in this country almost all of his life, makes a lot of money, very, you know, very successful. And he worries about his young people speaking out because they may be monitored and something may happen to them. They may be, like if they make a contribution to help people in Gaza, or they take part in a demonstration, that the government will somehow, you know, associate them with terrorism. And so he's protecting them rather than having them speaking out and become actively involved in the, you know, becoming actively involved in the media. And then I tell them, I say, look, if you don't do anything, the problem's going to be the same. So you become a part of government, okay? You become a part of the process. You direct movies, you write films. You can't just sit, if you sit and complain, that means you approve of the process. And we have these lengthy conversations, you know. And then I'll say to them, if you really want to make a difference, you'll write to me in a couple of weeks, a couple of months, a couple of years saying, this is what I have done, you know, to become active.
Right.
Not, you know, instead of expanding your TZ, you expand this. No, I mean that. I mean, you know, we love to talk.
Right.
You know, I love these parties where we go, oh, the situation in Gaza, it's so bad, you know, it's so bad. And then pass the hummus, you know. Come on. Come on. We have to do something. We have to become, like Dr. King said, movers and shakers.
Right.
And the beauty of it is we're good. See, we're very bright. I mean, I'm prejudiced here. I'm showing my prejudice. We're a very bright community. We're a very strong community. We're very good Americans. I mean, my God, we're so we're really very strong and very good, and that goodness has to be made visible in the media and in government, because those are the two power centers in this country, media and government, and we have to be involved in those centers of power.
Now, my last question to you is a selfish question. I mean, you have been supporting the museum from even before we opened. And if you want this museum to be really powerful, what is the potential of this place?
Well, I think the museum, there's so many people that still are not aware of our presence, which is shocking. I think the more people know about the museum, the greater the potential. So for me, I mean, the museum itself, its location, the manner in which you and others manage it, the dedication that you've given is a blessing. I think what needs to be done is that we need to be made more aware of what the museum is and how it contributes. I mean, the contributions that the museum makes in terms of education. I mean, the key to all of it isn't education, education about the stereotype, education about the culture, education about the past. As Danny Thomas used to say, someone who denies his heritage has no heritage, right? And the museum not only reveals the history of us, you know, Arab Americans, but also information about the Middle East, information that others, I mean, we you know, through our artists, our performers, our education, people have to be made aware of that. And even though it's located in Dearborn, what difference does it make? It's here. And I think that's going to take time. I mean, we've only been in existence 5 years, and it's going to take time for people to come. And I think eventually that will happen, but it's not easy. I think any time you want to bring about a change, and you know this, any time you are committed to enhancing someone's life through knowledge, through culture, through information, you face a challenge,
Right.
and you pay a price. I mean, but it's worth it.
Of course.
It's worth it. And so the museum, I think eventually the museum will become stronger and will expand and will become a center. It's already starting in that direction. It's simply a matter of time, and I think members of our community recognizing, coming here, you can't talk about the museum. You have to come here and see it and to experience it for yourself.
We were talking about turning points in your life, and you said a few things. Can you think of other turning points in your life?
Well, my mother, God rest her soul, I was in the military. I was serving, I served in the United States Army 1958 to 1960. My uncles, of course, all three of my uncles, William, George, Michael, they were in the Air Force and in the Army during, two of them during World War II and one during the Korean War. And I missed those conflicts. I was in between Korea and Vietnam. But here I am in Germany in the Army, and my mother says to me, why don't you visit Lebanon? You've never visited your family village. And so I did. And I remember, it's a good
What year was that?
1960.
And you were placed in Germany?
I was in Germany.
Okay.
So I went to Lebanon. I took a vacation. I had no idea what I was doing. I get to the Beirut airport. It's like 9 o'clock at night. And there's an information booth. And I'm standing there. And someone says to me, can I help you? I said, yes, I need to go to Hamet, my village of my family. And it's late. He says, you go sit up in the cafeteria. I'll be right there. So about 20 minutes later, he comes. He says, my friend knows so-and-so who knows so-and-so. We'll take you to Hamet. So I get my bags, like 3 guys, and they've got nuts and apricots in their car. And they turn on the radio, and there's Arabic music, And again, I had no idea. And they drive me to Hamet. No electricity, nothing. I get to Hamet. They start honking the horn. They woke everybody up. It's like 10 o'clock at night. They came out, all the family, because they thought, they didn't know when I was coming. And the one who spoke English wasn't there. So what did I do? Lahamishwe, hummus, baba ganoush. That's all. Yay! That's all. So I get up in the morning, and all the food, the kibbe, everything that I'd mentioned that night, they had gotten several members of the village together. And for breakfast, I had all these different foods. And then I remember, again, this was before the Fulbright. The beauty, the touring of Lebanon and seeing and the warmth of its people, the kindness and the charity and the love. That stayed with me, which I think really motivated me to want to get a Fulbright, to go to Beirut in 1974, 75. So thanks to the United States Army, they got me to Germany, so I could make that trip.
Tell me a little bit about your experience serving in the military.
Well, I was in artillery intelligence, but I wasn't very intelligent. I went in as an enlisted man.
Was like you had to go?
Well, no, I was drafted.
Drafted,
yes.
okay.
Yeah, I was drafted.
There was a draft.
I was a little older than most of the men with me, and I used to talk about artillery. I was in what they call Fire Directional Center. I would take a chart. It's all done by computers now with pins, and pinpoint where they should fire. So that the pins had to go in straight. If the pins went in crooked, you could be off 10, 20 miles, you'd kill your own troops. And haram, I'd always put the pins in crooked. So I wasn't.
Was
Anyway.
there a war at the time? No, there was no war.
we were at peace.
You were just stationed in Germany?
Yes, that's when I was introduced to coffee. I never drank coffee till I went
Okay.
to Germany, because because it was so cold, I had to have something hot. Yeah.
And how did you meet your wife? How did you meet Bernice?
Well, Bernice rescued me. I was in Los Angeles. I went to Los Angeles in the mid-'60s. I wanted to direct, like our friend Assad Khalada, I wanted to direct television shows. And so I used to go like Assad. I'd sit in on the Lucy show, other television shows, 12 O'Clock High, to see how they directed for television. Khalada did the same thing. Only I ran out of money. I was broke for the first time in my life. I had no money, nothing. And I used to go to the Knesset every Sunday, and I would run after church. I'd go away, because I was embarrassed, I did nothing. And one Sunday after church, somebody introduced me to Bernice, and Bernice said, "Would you like to come have lunch?" And that was it. That was it.
That was it.
Yeah. That was it.
So when you studied in the university, when you were undergrad and grad, you studied communication?
I studied the arts. I studied directing initially.
Okay.
But my master's and my PhD was in mass communications.
Mass communications, okay.
But there was one other thing. Right after the Army, I went to work for the government. I went back to Germany, and I created the Berlin International Theater. And it was the first time, this was when Berlin was divided. And I took the Berliners, the British, the French, and the Americans, and we did theater in Berlin. And we used to do these plays at the America House. And the Germans, or the Berliners, loved this, because it brought people together. Berlin was isolated. I watched them build the wall, Anan. I used to go down and watch them brick up the windows. I used to yell up and saying, my German was pretty good back then, and I'd say some unkind things to the East German police, because they would be holding guns at the bricklayers as they would brick up the windows, so nobody could jump down and escape. So I think that experience too in Berlin, working with the British, the French, the Berliners, seeing man's inhumanity. Today, we have this wall in Israel that nobody talks about and we don't even see. When the Berlin Wall was up, we talked about it and saw it all the time. And this is what I mean about presence. If there were more Americans with Arab roots in the media, we would see that wall. We don't see it now. And we'd compare that wall to the Berlin Wall, and how it's much, much more, it's horrific. It's ugly, and it separates people, and it's outrageous and a crime against humanity, and yet no one talks about it. So this Berlin Wall, and I used to go there at least once a week, just to, to see, to understand. So it was a learning process. Much of what happens to us in our lives comes through exposure, and how we take what what the exposure does things to us. It helps shape us. Not only in our family, but what we see, what we feel from other people, other countries. So that was, again, another, I think, turning point, Berlin, and the wall in Berlin.
Now, when you graduated, you didn't see yourself doing what you end up doing.
No.
What were you hoping to be? Well, I mean, when you graduate, you have your PhD, say, now I'm going to be...
I was going to be like Khalada. I was going to be a director.
Ah.
I was going to
Movie
direct
directors,
movie,
okay.
television. I was going to be one of those, I'm still a good director now.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm as good as Khalada. We'd have to have a contest, but I do. But WASTA, I didn't know anyone, and I ran out of money. So I met Bernice. And if I wanted to get married, I had to
have a job.
It was right for me to be a teacher. It worked out just fine.
You know, we're
Lord.
very proud of what you've accomplished. I mean, to me, you're one of the icon of Arab American. And I'm glad, in a way, you didn't go to direction. Maybe you'd have done good there. But
I wouldn't
what
have had Bernice in the family.
But what you have done to our community is really something remarkable, and we want to thank you for it.
Oh.
And I want to thank you for this interview.
Thank you.